final round of the 2015 FF1M Championship comes to you from the Suzuka circuit in Japan, a fan favourite and a driver favourite as well, containing some of the most challenging and memorable corners like the S's, the two Degners, the Spoon Curve, the fearsome 130R, and my own personal bastard, the Dunlop Curve. But let's be honest, we all love this place. It's even got a figure of 8 and a Ferris wheel, which you can see on the left. Not much to play for in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship, since both were decided at the Malaysian Grand Prix in favour of Fernando Alonso and Tornado Motorsports. Speaking of which, there were rumours going on of a driver swap which have now been confirmed for this final race. Fernando Alonso moves to Exolite a race early in a swap with Jenson Button, partly because Tornado wanted to give him a good send-off as he's heading into retirement at the end of the season, but partly out of sympathy because Button has had a pretty horrible season, still the only driver not to have scored points. Even Benjamin Pryor and Cristobal Alvarez have managed that feat. And there's another driver swap as well. Charlotte Plectrum is back at FJR, who have a new sponsor for this race as well. Keep an eye out for that on the rear wing. There's a look at the circuit, and we're expecting a mixture of strategies, 2 or 3 stops. Most of the field are on soft tyres, so logically speaking you can expect to see those do 3 stops and those on the harder compounds just a 2, but who knows? Some of the softs might do 2 stops, some of the hards might do 3. So, the starting grid for this race, it's an all Yorkshire front row in terms of the teams. Sebastian Vettel takes pole position ahead of Lewis Hamilton, Exolite's first front row of the season, and Jenson Button, he has a chance at scoring points because he's up in 3rd for Tornado. That's correct, with Tornado. Rosberg will start 4th, and then it's an all Meister row 3 with Felipe Massa ahead of Kimi Raikkonen this time. Row 4 sees Thomas Gonzalez, still yet to win a race this season. This is his last chance to do so for this season, and alongside him in front of his home crowd, Itsuki Yoshida. Then Valtteri Bottas will start 9th on the grid ahead of Stoffel Vandoorne in the top 10. 11th is Carlos Sainz ahead of the Australian Grand Prix winner Daniel Ricciardo. Only one podium since then, that was in Mexico. Then Fernando Alonso for Exolite, that's correct, and ahead of Kevin Magnussen in 14th. Cooper Lee will start 15th in what was a tricky qualifying session for Mitchell, similarly so for Pedersen. Roman Grosjean will start 16th, and All Gojira row 9. Remember, they perform much stronger in the race thanks to a decent Mugen engine. 19th and 20th, the other Mitchell and the other Pedersen of Nico Hülkenberg and Sergio Perez. And then the back row filled by Charlotte Plectrum. That's not Charlotte Plectrum's face, that is Cristobal Alvarez's face, but I promise you it is Charlotte Plectrum in 21st, ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa in 22nd. And there's still quite a few battles to decide in the Drivers and Constructors, although not at the front. It's a battle for runner-up in the Drivers and a few in the Constructors. So, 5 lights go out, and from pole position Sebastian Vettel gets away pretty well. There's an Andrew flying through the pack. Is that Daniel Ricciardo? And through the first corner is Vettel versus Button. Button making a good start ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who's dropped down behind the 2008 champion and the 2006 champion Nico Rosberg, who's had a good start. And through the first sequence of corners, that's the S's, now into the Dunlop curve, the left, and it's Vettel in the lead from Button, Rosberg, Hamilton. The two Meisters maintaining 5th and 6th. Button having a look going into the first Degner, not to be recommended, and he's dropped back quite a bit. Looking to finish his final FF1M race in style is Jenson, and hoping to not go an entire season without points, which would be ignominious to say the least. But he puts himself in a good position to avoid that feat. Meanwhile, in 7th and 8th, it's still Gonzalez and Yoshida. And I did mention the Andrew making a pretty interesting start. It was Daniel Ricciardo, who's up to 9th, so that's a good start from him. Less so for Sergio Perez, down from 20th to 22nd, the two Meisters getting a bit frisky through 130R. Raikkonen having a look at Felipe Massa, but not making that one stick. And through the final sequence of corners, that were Magnussen versus Alonso in the Excellite. Magnussen having a look at Fernando, but not making that one stick. And lap 2, Sebastian Vettel on the softs. Button also on the softs. A lot of drivers on the softs while this race. Interestingly, the Gujeras have taken the medium compound. And then Alonso for his first race at Excellite, and he's already out on lap 2. So, well, that was good timing to get rid of him, wasn't it, Tobias? Not so good timing for James Whiteley and his Excellite team. And a puncture right on the second lap. That is bad luck for Fernando. And that's not going to do finishing not last any good for Excellite, because they do sit there on 22 points. Just a few behind Pedersen and a few more behind Mitchell and FJR. This is Button having a look at the inside of Vettel into 130R. That is some power on that climax. At the inside, and he's taken the lead. Jenson Button takes the lead of the race on the second lap, and Lewis Hamilton is trying to close up on Rosberg as if to make a similar move on him, but not quite close enough yet. But wouldn't this be a story if Button can leave Tornado, leave FF1M on victory? Michael Schumacher did something like that in the 2006 season. He won his final ever FF1M race. That was for FJR at the 2006 Brazilian Grand Prix, and that helped his teammate Nico Rosberg win the championship. The inside into the spoon curve, Lewis Hamilton having a look at Nico Rosberg and Thomas Gonzalez. He's already got past Kimi Raikkonen. Now he's going to try and get past Felipe Massa for 5th position. I wonder what engine modes Tornado are running, because Jenson Button powered past Sebastian Vettel very quickly. And, well, they're sort of similar speeds, Gonzalez and Massa, so maybe Tornado are running just the mode 1 and the slipstream helped him out there. But they could be running mode 2, who knows. I suspect they are running mode 1 in order to conserve reliability. Gonzalez is a bit twitchy through turn 2. Off the track goes Gonzalez. Is he going to spin? He's going to rejoin. Oh, right nearly into the path of another driver. That was Daniel Ricciardo. And off the track goes Hamilton from 4th position to both Excelites in the doldrums. Now, can Hamilton rejoin? And if he can't, that's Excellite rooted to last in the championship. Well, he's showing us 21st at the moment, but is that 21st and still running, or is that 21st and retired? Goodness me, so both Excelites, well, as I say, in the doldrums. Alonso, no fault of his own. Hamilton, that was completely his own fault. Meanwhile, the two Meisters going through the two Degners. On the hard tyres are the two Meisters, and that worked out to perfection for Massa at Hungary, one of the only drivers to have done so, to take the hard tyres, and of course he won that. Another one was Daniel Ricciardo at Hungary. He took the hard tyres and made no mistakes as far as I could see, on his way to 5th position, I believe. Now Thomas Gonzalez beginning some sort of recovery drive. This is on Daniel Ricciardo's 8th position, going through the spoon curves. Now he's in the slipstream going into the straight heading into 130R. And he's in 9th position at the moment, but will that be 8th place as they turn into the 130R? Yes, indeed it is. So Gonzalez back up to 8th. Next target, Itsuki Yoshida. So we got both shake and bakes in the top 8. Sebastian Vettel's 2nd, Yoshida. Oh, then there's a GRM going off the track. Is that going to make the barriers? No, it isn't. Carlos Sainz getting away with one there. But he's going to lose a few positions. He's lost a place to Bottas. No, he's not lost a place to Bottas. He's ahead of him. And going through the first couple of corners. In fact, is Gonzalez going to go off again? No, he's not. He's gone through the first couple of corners safely. Now into 3 and 4. Oh, he's going to go off at turn 4. Right into the path of Ricciardo. And Ricciardo going to retake that position off of the Argentine driver. They're side by side as they exit the S's. Now up the inside into the Dunlop curve. Gonzalez is going to inch ahead of Daniel Ricciardo going through here. Now into the Degners. Gonzalez just about maintains that position. So Gonzalez having a bit of a messy race so far, but still in the points. And it is Jenson Button still leading. 3.2 seconds is the gap between himself and Sebastian Vettel. Nico Rosberg third. Felipe Massa fourth. Kimi Räikkönen fifth. Itsuki Yoshida sixth. Gonzalez seventh. And then a battle for eighth between Ricciardo and Sainz into the 130R. Sainz takes that position off of the Andrew driver. Now into the Casio triangle. Sainz having just taken that position off of Ricciardo. To first corner, that is well wide from Sainz once again, and he's going to spin it. Just about kissing the barrier, but there's an FJR flying into him nearly. That's Kevin Magnussen. Now let's see his mistake. The first corner a bit too wide. Onto the curb. He's going to make the barrier just about, but I think he's rejoined. Well, he's rejoined in last. So it seems that mistakes are quite plentiful, especially if you're running the soft tyres in this race. Two Meisters looking quite good, therefore, in 4th and 5th. Kimi Räikkönen, there he is, chasing Felipe Massa, and Magnussen has actually retired from the race. That was confirmed. He must have lost some parts, including a wheel maybe, at the first corner. So not a good race for FJR, especially as they're involved in that battle for last with Mitchell, Pedersen and Exelite, but with Exelite so far down, it doesn't look as if they're going to challenge for not finishing last. Pedersen, where are they? In fact, Massa's just taken Rosberg for third position. Let's concentrate on that first of all. So both Meisters are on the move. Massa taking third. Now Kimi Räikkönen is going to have a look at Nico Rosberg for fourth position. Now the two Mitchells, they're another team involved in the battle for last. They're 14th and 15th, but they're on the hard tyres. The more consistent hard tyres for the race. But these two have been in argy-bargy at some point in the season, and they're getting at it again. Cooper Lee was having a look at Nico Hülkenberg into the chicane, but not making that one work. Now Roman Grosjean is going to have a look at Lee into the first corner, not making that one work either. Kimi Räikkönen versus Rosberg into the spoon curve. Räikkönen got an overlap, but Nico Rosberg had the line. Now Thomas Gonzalez is going to try and do something about the pair of them, but it is Kimi Räikkönen now up the inside of Rosberg, going into the straight, heading into the 130R. Now Gonzalez is having a look as well. That's going to get a bit tasty if they're not careful. Into the final chicane. Gonzalez having a look, trying to outbrake Rosberg, but not making that one stick. Rosberg has clunked over the curbs. Now he's on the outside curb, and Gonzalez takes that position off of him. So up to 5th position goes the Tornado driver. So this is it's now lap 12, as Gonzalez now has a look at Kimi Räikkönen into the spoon curve. Not making that one work, but looks as if he might be able to get him onto this straight, coming out of the spoon curve. Look at the colour of the trees on the right hand side, they're nice and autumnal. Kind of reminds you of the autumn ring in Gran Turismo. Now at the inside he's got him. Thomas Gonzalez up to 4th position. So now, Räikkönen having a look back into the chicane, but not quite brave enough on the brakes, and probably rightly so, but Räikkönen in the pits. So, despite running hard tyres, Räikkönen looks as if he is on a 3-stop strategy, because this is on lap 13. And let's have a look at how much fuel he takes on. He's only got 1 lap of fuel left. Who else is into the pits? So 2 more. That's one of them's Daniel Ricciardo. The other's Itsuki Yoshida. So let's see the Meister pull away. 4.9 seconds stop, maybe a little delay from Ricciardo, and 18 laps of fuel taken on board. So Räikkönen's going to lap 31, what should be a 3-stop strategy, as is Felipe Massa. Massa also 3-stopping, it seems. Trundling down the pit lane at about 50 miles an hour into his pit box and go another set of hard tyres. And 6.1 seconds is Massa's stop. So where is Kimi Räikkönen in relation to the Brazilian? Räikkönen has already got ahead. So new tyres. I'm expecting them to be very powerful on this sort of circuit because there's a lot of fast corners. Very aerodynamic dependent, but very grip dependent as well. And look at that rear wheel of Yoshida. Yoshida off and then making the wall. Just about, but his wheel was already loosening up, so Yoshida looks as if he's in trouble. Yep, Yoshida out with an accident. Maybe his rear wheel wasn't so wonky after all. Maybe he just lost it of his own accord. But yep, Yoshida's definitely out of the race. And by the looks of it, Hamilton did rejoin after his mistake in the S's. Jenson Button into the pits. Now then, let's see how much fuel he takes on board. It's lap 15, kind of neither 3 or 2 stopping, but he is 2 stopping. That's 24 laps of fuel going on board. And Sebastian Vettel into the pits as well. So Thomas Gonzalez will assume the lead of the race so far, but having yet to make his first stop, as Button rejoins second ahead of Nico Rosberg. And then Vettel 3 stopping. That is very little fuel that he's taken on board. So that doesn't really say much for the shake and bake pace if Button is 2 stopping. Granted, they did have the same amount of fuel on board, but yeah, Vettel doing a 3 stop might not be the correct one. Now Thomas Gonzalez is heading into the pits on this lap. Be interesting to see how much fuel he takes on board. Button will retake the lead. Gonzalez was about a dozen seconds behind when the pit stop sequence started. So, yeah, Button looking good for points, looking good for a win on his farewell drive. As into the box goes Gonzalez. And that's a lot of fuel going on board. 26 extra laps going on board. So that's going to lap 42. That's going to be fat. As more mechanics come out into the pits. Jenson Button retakes the lead. Where did Gonzalez rejoin? That was 9th, behind the 2 Meisters. And Kimi Raikkonen all over the back of Sebastian Vettel. Vettel on that 3-stop strategy needs to stay ahead of Raikkonen if he's going to make this work. Then again, Raikkonen might also be 3 stopping. At the moment, we've got the 2 Gajeras, 3rd and 5th, having yet to make a pit stop, as is Rosberg and Van Dorn. Vettel locks up a lot going into the chicane, clunking over the curbs, now all over the exit curb. So that was a mistake from the German. As we see positions reshuffling themselves. Right, this was when Gonzalez making his pit. So look at that lock-up on that right front for Vettel. So that was why Kimi Raikkonen was close to him on that lap. This is a replay that we are looking at. And obviously Raikkonen doesn't overtake Sebastian, but he does have a look going into the first corner, or a think, as Vettel now has a look at Robert Kubica for 5th position. Not close enough. Oh, look at that. That's his Stoffel Van Dorn. I think he's trying to make a pit stop, but some people are in the way. And that Raikkonen got ahead of Vettel, so that's really delayed the shake and bake driver. So, let's try and explain that. Van Dorn was heading into the pits, taking the outside line for the left-hand part of the chicane. Oh no, Jenson Button! Oh, I cannot believe that! He was looking set for... Oh. Wow. I have no words for that. Jenson Button will still remain without points, even despite his best shot. Well, it's been fun commentating on you, Jenson. Been fun having you since the 2000 season when you joined Maestro Motorsport. And then the glory years of your Tornado days, 2008 and 2009. Winning the World Championship in 2008 and helping Tornado to the Constructors' Championship that year as well. Been nice to have seen a farewell for you, but not meant to be. If he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck. So what's this done for the race order? Well, the 2 Gajeras are actually running 1st and 2nd now, Verne and Kubica, but having yet to make their first of what looks like 2 stops. Gajeras definitely look like they're going to be 2 stopping in this race. So your true leader at the moment is Kimi Raikkonen from Sebastian Vettel. And there's confirmation of Jenson Button retiring with, well, it says an oil leak, but let's be honest, it was a massive climax. Pun intended. As Roman Grosjean comes into the pits, Pedersen also look like they're 2 stopping, because Grosjean making his first pit stop on lap 18. Perez likely to follow suit. And still the Gajeras have not yet pitted. So Kimi Raikkonen having a look at Robert Kubica going into the spoon curve. Let's see if he can make that one stick. No, but he's not close enough in the end. Mugen's race engine is naturally very powerful. Climax have caught up quite well as the season has gone along. And now Kimi Räikkönen trying to get up the inside going into the 130R. Is he close enough? No, he's not. Now he's better be careful because Sebastian Vettel is lurking large. Now Kimi Räikkönen has made a mess of that going into the chicane. Braked way too late, nudging the back of Kubica, and now he's dropped down the order, nearly causing a T-bone on Thomas Gonzalez. Vern into the pits. Kubica temporarily leads, but for how much longer? Because Sebastian Vettel half a second behind. Massa just 3 seconds behind Kubica. Here's a replay of what happened. And yeah, just getting his braking completely wrong, and nice little pirouette on the grass. Brief trip through the gravel, and nearly T-boning Gonzalez right there. In fact, this is an onboard of Gonzalez. Let's see what happens to him. So he's having a go at the inside of Massa into the 130R. Makes that one stick, but not quite because Massa's still there on the inside into the chicane. And Gonzalez tries it round the outside, but goes curb hopping. So that explains his bad exit, and that's where Kimi Räikkönen nearly took him out. And now Sebastian Vettel challenging Robert Kubica for the lead. Not a true lead, but this is 3-stopping Vettel, trying to make the most of his strategy. He's now got a buffer over a Meister, which is now Felipe Massa, 2.6 seconds behind the German. Thomas Gonzalez sits 4th now, partly thanks to Vern making a pit stop. So now you can see the sheer grunt of the Mugen engine, because when the shake and bake pulled out, he couldn't do anything. Oh, Vern! Straight after his pit stop has suffered a transmission failure, and now going to the pit lane is Kubica, and now taking a true lead is Sebastian Vettel. But remember, on the 3-stop strategy, compared to Kubica's 2, and Perez still hasn't made a pit stop yet, so should be expecting him into the pits either on this lap or the following lap. Just looking through the charts, Da Costa's made 2 pit stops as Rosberg through the first corner runs wide, and he's going to have a little lazy spin in the gravel trap, but he should rejoin from that, making an unusual right-hand donut. This is Gonzalez versus Massa for 2nd position now. In fact, they're closing in on Sebastian Vettel, so it's a close fight between the top 4, but strategies are very different. Gonzalez is 2-stopping, very heavy on fuel. Vettel's definitely 3-stopping. I'll double check Massa and Räikkönen because I think they may have split the strategies. We'll have another look as Gonzalez up the inside into the spoon curve, not quite close enough to make that one work. Meanwhile, what have we got? Kubica now 5th, Bottas 6th, Hülkenberg 7th. Sainz has just taken Ricciardo for 8th position, so now we've got both GRMs in the top 8. Now up the inside at 130R, Gonzalez takes Massa. Now he's going to try and set off after Vettel. And, well, let's see if Gonzalez can make that. And Ricciardo's out of the race, so that's why Sainz overtook him, because Daniel Ricciardo had stopped. Another gearbox problem. They've been clunking the curbs at the chicane, so I'm wondering if Ricciardo's been doing a bit of that. Wouldn't surprise me because off goes Gonzalez again. Is he going to make the wall? Not quite, but another mistake for Thomas Gonzalez. Well, he's stuck so far. Can he rejoin? Marshall's waiting patiently for him to do so. If not, then he's lost the engine. So understeering at the first corner, getting onto the curb and then the gravel, and then skidding into a standstill. So let's see, through the S's now, Sebastian Vettel, is he going to make his own mistake into the gravel trap? And just about holding on to the lead. These soft tyres are very inconsistent, and we're seeing a lot of mistakes by drivers on those. Now going through the long right before the spoon curve, Sebastian Vettel, 2.4 seconds ahead of Massa as they cross the line to start this lap, but with Vettel having made that mistake at the S's, the gap is a lot smaller. Keep an eye out on the gap between Vettel and Kubica as well. It's 21.2 seconds. Should be less than 20 seconds now after Vettel's minor mistake. And Gonzalez retires from the race, so he didn't rejoin from the gravel trap, like Kevin Magnussen. So Where he was stationary must have been a very deep part of the gravel trap, and it's beached the car. Now starting the lap number 23 is Sebastian Vettel. It's 0.7 of a second, the gap. Stoffel Vandoorne versus Cooper Lee for 9th position. In fact, Gonzalez's retirement, we're not even half distance yet. That's the 8th retirement of the race. We're going to see a lot of attrition as Stoffel Vandoorne comes into the pits to remedy a loose wheel. That'll be fixed, and he'll be off on his way. Sebastian Vettel due in the pits on this lap, not quite at half distance. Pretty much at half distance once he crosses the line during this pit stop. The target to get out ahead of Robert Kubica and try and maintain a top 3 position. I'm going to say that's unlikely, but let's see what happens at this pit stop. In 5.6 seconds, away goes Sebastian Vettel. Remember, Itsuki Yoshida retired from the race quite a while ago. That was Kubica going past, so he's quite a way behind Robert. So either Robert's done a pretty good job in this... Yeah, he's done a great job in this second stint so far. Gajera looking for a win, and if the two Meisters are 3 stopping, then it's not looking too bad for Robert Kubica in the Gajera. Stoffel Vandoorne going through the first corner. He's going to make the same mistake as Magnussen and Gonzalez and many others before him, and he is nearing the wall. Is he beached, or can he rejoin from that? And Lewis Hamilton's engine has gone. So, Exolite definitely rooted to last in the championship, unfortunately. But with Alonso and Grosjean and Megatron engines next season, they look forward to hopefully a better season. And from what I remember, Exolite did abandon development at around Silverstone, so they should have a good car. So, 12 cars left now, and we are only just over half distance as Felipe Massa makes his second of 3 stops. So, Massa is definitely on a 3-stop strategy because he's taken on a total of 16 laps of fuel, but of course they don't run it completely dry, so should be seeing him back into the pits at lap 42 or lap 43. Raikkonen also looking like he's on a 3-stop strategy as well as he's into the pits on the very next lap. As Robert Kubica now takes the lead of the race. He started 18th on the grid, did Kubica, and he's in the lead. That's an incredible performance from Robert, and he's on the medium tyres. Raikkonen on the hard tyres and still 3 stopping. Taking on what looked like a little bit less fuel than Massa. There's your leader, Robert Kubica, going into the first corner, now into the second corner. But there's your second place man, Sebastian Vettel. And he's charging a bit. He's 2.2 seconds behind the Gajera driver. And looking to do something about his season, just in general, and trying to rescue what has been a dismal second half for Shake and Bake. This is Perez versus Hülkenberg for 7th position, going down the back straight into 130R. Hülkenberg takes the place, which is 7th place. And that'll be important for Hülkenberg if he can get in the points, because that will put him ahead of FJR in the in the Constructors' Championship, because Mitchell and FJR sit equal, and FJR's only hope of points is Charlotte Plectrum, at the moment down in 12th place. But with the way this race is going, any car that finishes could get points. It's worth keeping an eye on Sergio Perez as well, because Perez is part of Pedersen at the moment, and they are still in a battle for last position. Guaranteed to finish 10th now with the Exolite's demise, but if Perez can get up the order a little bit more, then Pedersen could jump Mitchell and FJR. So it's worth keeping an eye on Perez as well as Hülkenberg. Both GRMs in the top 6 now, Bottas and Sainz 5th and 6th. Now the inside is Vettel into turn 1 against Robert Kubica for the race lead. Not quite working out. And Vettel better be careful, because Felipe Massa's only 4.1 seconds behind this battling duo. And Kimi Raikkonen not too far behind either. So it's a four-way battle for the lead between Kubica, Vettel, Massa and Raikkonen. 5th and 6th, the two GRMs, Bottas and Sainz, then Hülkenberg and Perez, 7th and 8th. Charlotte Plectrum's just taken Antonio Felix da Costa for 11th position. Now his next target is Cooper Lee. This will be Pick's last drive for quite a while. I suspect he'll get a few runs in the FGT3 Super Cup Series. But Pick having one last hurrah for his season because he's not got a drive for 2016. And Kubica defending quite aggressively into the spoon curve because Vettel nearly had a run on him. Just one more on FJR actually. They've got a new sponsor, in fact we'll get onto that in a moment. Vettel now trying to challenge for the lead, but Kubica's sheer engine power ensures that he pulls ahead before 130R and stays in the lead for now. So that's going to be quite interesting to see over the next few laps, Kubica versus Vettel. If we get another shot at an FJR, hopefully at Pick, then the back of the car, they're displaying a new sponsor, one off for the Japanese Grand Prix. Vettel having a look at the inside into turn 1, not quite making that one stick, and Massa took 2.7 seconds out of this leading duo, so it's going to be a three-way battle for the lead very soon. Yeah, normally on the FJR car, on the rear wing for this season, you've been seeing Boss. That's been changed to Baby Metal because it is the Japanese Grand Prix, and Baby Metal are a Japanese metal band. And that sponsor is to specifically annoy James Whiteley, because he doesn't really like that band, but he's wrong because they're awesome. And now Sebastian Vettel, he had a look at the inside of Kubica into the first Degner, which is not an overtaking opportunity, and that's put him under pressure from Felipe Massa. Now let's see what happens coming out of the hairpin, because Vettel has got a bit of a slipstream on Kubica, but now Massa's got a bit of a slipstream on Vettel into the spoon curve, not quite there. Now then, let's see the grip through the second part of spoon onto the back straight. Goes Kubica, Vettel, Massa. Race lead between these three. And who's going to duck out of the slipstream? It's going to be Massa, who's having a look at Vettel into the 130R. Not quite making that one work out. Nearly contact between the two. Now into the chicane. Clunking the curbs once again. And through the final right-hand sweep. Onto the main straight. Underneath the Sega Bridge. To start lap 34, the top three separated by just 0.6 of a second. And as yellow flags out, who has gone off? I think it's Charlotte Plectrum. It is indeed. So another mistake for an FJR. They can see the Baby Metal on the rear wing, but it is not metal for Pick. Now, can he rejoin from there, or is he stuck? The two GRMs are about to go into battle now into 130R. Sainz appears to be the quicker driver at this stage. And side by side through the 130R, that's brave from the pair of them. Who's going to be latest on the brakes going into the final chicane? It is Sainz up to 5th position. And Charles Pick out of the race. So the gravel trap claiming quite a lot of drivers, it seems. And once again, Vettel having a look at the wrong place, and that's going to put him under pressure from Massa once again. In fact, there is Kimi Raikkonen in 4th position. So if Hülkenberg can just finish in the points, then Mitchell will jump FJR for 8th in the championship, and if Perez can get a few more, then Pedersen will jump FJR as well. So not a good race for FJR at all. Magnussen out very early and Pick out a little bit later on. Now onto the back straight once again. Kubica's got a bit more of a gap this time. Has Vettel got enough of a slipstream to defend his second position, or is Felipe Massa going to take second as they go through 130R? Yes, he is! Felipe Massa up to second. Now is he going to try and challenge Robert Kubica for the race lead? Vettel having a think back at Massa, but not quite making that one work. Now he's got to be careful of Kimi Raikkonen behind him. But now it's Kubica and Massa. They were FJR teammates, actually, in the 2009 season. Now then, through the first corner, Raikkonen versus Vettel now. Raikkonen not quite alongside and having to back out of that one. Now it's single file through the S's. Massa's going to be held up a bit by the Gajera of Kubica, whose medium tyres might be struggling a little bit. Now then, through the Dunlop. Right behind Kubica now is Massa. Exiting the Dunlop. And again, having a look, and I think Raikkonen was trying to have a look as well. Massa tucked back into the racing line before the Degner curve though, so he hasn't lost any time. It's going to be down to the final stint, I think, because if Kubica's 2 stopping, then he's going to be pitting first, and he's going to be maintaining the lead of the race as we round the long right before the Spoon curve. Kubica choosing to defend a little bit going into the Spoon curve, and as a result he's going to become under pressure going down the back straight into the 130R. Now let's see. Manufacturer Mugen may be running higher engine modes, but I suspect they're not, and a Climax that doesn't have access to higher engine modes, and that's the result. Kubica still in the lead, going through 130R and maintaining that for now. Through the chicane, Kubica's going to start another lap. That'll be his 36th, and Massa just 4 tenths behind. And then Vettel versus Raikkonen as well. And it looks as if Vettel is just sort of pacing himself behind this battling duo. And it looks as if this battle is going to rage on for quite a while longer. Through the S's. Worth mentioning that Meister have long since secured second in the Constructors' Championship. I think if it stays like this, GRM, well, it's going to be very close actually. We might have to find out in the end of this race to see who gets third in the Constructors' Championship, because it's pretty close between GRM, Gajera and Shake and Bake. GRM do sit third at the moment, and I think Gajera and Shake and Bake are level peggings going into this race. But with Gajera leading, they could jump up to third if the 2 GRMs have a calamity. And now up the inside into the Spoon, well, having a look. Felipe Massa not quite close enough there. And onto the back straight. Now then, how much of a slipstream does Massa get? How much of a launch does he get off the back of the Gajera? How much does the Gajera start to pull away at the front? Can Massa do something about it? They're side by side through 130R. Kubica getting onto the curbs, but getting away with that one. Now Vettel was defending a little bit from Kimi Raikkonen as well. And still this 4-way battle rages on, which could go either way. Either 4-way. And Raikkonen having a look up the inside of Vettel into the first corner. Not often you see overtakes there, and Vettel grimly hanging on round the outside. Now through the S's they go. It's Kubica, it's Massa. A little bit further back now is Vettel and Raikkonen. Says 1.6, but it looks a little bit more than that. And Sainz is actually closing in on this lot, but he is 20 seconds, well 21.8 seconds behind the race leader. Valtteri Bottas sits 6th, 26.8 seconds off of Robert Kubica, who is in the pits this lap. His indicator is on, so that's going to push the advantage in his favour ever so slightly, because he'll have the undercut compared to Massa, Vettel and Raikkonen. But then again, once Vettel, Massa and Raikkonen make their third pit stops, they'll have the tyre advantage. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens afterwards. As now back in the slipstream goes Felipe Massa. Again, not much of a slingshot from the back of the Gajera, and it looks like Kubica will still hang on round the outside, but now Vettel has lost third position to Kimi Raikkonen going through the 130R. Now keep an eye on the front, because Kubica is going to peel into the pits. Well, he lost the lead to Massa, but that was because he was making his pit stop. They take an unusual line through the final chicane in order to enter the pit lane. But on board with Kubica, pulling right into his pit garage. On go a third set of medium tyres, and away in 6 seconds flat. So the target for Kubica is to go ahead of Sainz. Well, ahead of Bottas, because Sainz might jump Kubica for now. In fact, he doesn't, because Sainz is in the pits. That's going to work out very well for Robert Kubica, who now sits in 4th. But there's more pit stops to come. Right, immediately out of the pits, Sainz crashes! Sainz, having just made his pit stop, has just crashed out of the race, so that is a careless one for Carlos. Now that moves Hülkenberg up to 6th position, Perez up to 7th. I'm going to have a quick look and see the championship standings and find out how many points Pedersen sit behind Mitchell and FJR. As Valtteri Bottas makes a pit stop in just 4.7 seconds. That is the quickest of the race so far. And out of the pits, in some nice clear track, goes the GRM. On soft tyres, so they're more error prone and a bit more inconsistent. Now it's two Meisters battling for the lead. Massa versus Raikkonen. So the 130, they're side by side. Risking it there. Just in the background is Sebastian Vettel. Now if Vettel makes his final pit stop first, he could do something about the two Meisters. Let's keep an eye. Does Vettel pit? The two Meisters are certainly staying out. Nope, Vettel carries on for another lap, and he is about half a second a lap slower compared to the two Meisters. So Vettel, he needs to react pretty quickly. In fact, one of the Meisters is coming in the pits. It is Felipe Massa. You can see we're looking at Raikkonen, and his pit indicator is red. That means his teammate is coming into the pits at the end of this lap to make a pit stop. Now is Vettel going to do the same thing? Kubica is flying on his new set of mediums because he's about 2 seconds a lap quicker since he made his pit stop than the two Meisters and the Shake and Bake, who have yet to make their final pit stop. So Kubica will definitely maintain the lead for now, but will he stay there, or will Meisters and possibly Vettel have a good tyre advantage once they fit some more new tyres? As Sergio Perez comes into the pits for his second stop, was running in 8th position. I think he got overtaken by Cooper Lee before this sequence of pit stops. I think the two Mitchell, side by side once again, the two Meisters. Now keep an eye on the front because Massa will peel right at this point of the chicane. There he goes. And Vettel's making a pit stop as well. So for the moment, Kimi Raikkonen is in the lead, but he has one more pit stop to make, which will probably come on this next upcoming lap. Felipe Massa trundling down the pit lane, as is Sebastian Vettel. Now, can Shake and Bake see to Vettel quick enough that he could jump Felipe Massa at this point of the pit lane? Massa just about makes it, so Massa stays ahead of Vettel as they exit the pits. And a long way behind Robert Kubica. Let's see the gap once this lot complete their first out laps since making their third stops. Hülkenberg makes a pit stop from 5th position. He'll drop a place to Valtteri Bottas. Rounding the Dunlop curve, there goes Felipe Massa. The gap between himself and Sebastian Vettel was 3 odd seconds. 8.7 seconds is the gap between Kubica and Massa. That was some set of outlaps for Kubica. Now, can Massa do anything about Kubica now that he's on the fresher tyres? And Massa's pit indicator's red, so Kimi Raikkonen is going to come into the pits at the end of this lap. Roman Grosjean makes a pit stop. A bit off the pace as Roman, he hadn't really got it together in this race. Outqualified Perez, but Perez seems to have the better race pace. Then again, Grosjean might have had an off somewhere. Both Pedersens are on the hard tyres though, so less likely to have had an off. Kubica's going to retake the lead because Kimi Raikkonen is in the pits. So, let's see the gaps now between Kubica and the chasing three. I think Vettel might get Kimi Raikkonen down the main straight. No, he doesn't. Raikkonen maintains a position ahead of Sebastian Vettel, so both Meisters ahead of the Shake and Bakes, and Massa has just as fresh tyres compared to his teammate. No, in fact, compared to Vettel, but Raikkonen's got the 1 lap younger tyres. And in fact, it doesn't look as if Massa can do anything about Robert Kubica, because Kubica is some 10 seconds ahead of the two Meisters who are about to go into combat with each other. And I'm just having a quick look at the Constructors' Championship. Pedersen sit on 24 points. FJR sit on 27 points. So Perez needs a 6th place. Oh, but then again, Grosjean has just come into the frame. Grosjean has just taken 8th position off of Cooper Lee. Now that gives Pedersen the 3 points to tie with FJR, but Pedersen have had 2 second places and FJR have had just the 1. So FJR look on course to finish 10th if it stays like this in the Constructors' Championship. And Mitchell, at the moment, they sit equal with FJR on 27 points each, but Hulkenberg up in 6th. And they've still got Cooper Lee in the race as well. It's showing us Da Costa and Lee having made 4 stops each. Now, Da Costa did make a very early second stop, which was more than likely to be unscheduled, so that runs true. Maybe Lee had a same thing as well. No, Stoffel Vandoorne had an unscheduled pit stop midway through the race, but he's gone and crashed it. So yeah, Da Costa and Lee looks as if they've had unscheduled stops at some point during the race. 10 runners remaining, and they are Kubica in the race lead, 10.7 seconds ahead of the battle for second between Felipe Massa and Kimi Räikkönen, then Sebastian Vettel 4th for Shake and Bake, Valtteri Bottas 5th for GRM ahead of Hulkenberg in 6th position. Up the inside into the spoon curve goes Räikkönen, but not making that one work. That was as close as anyone has got in this race so far. Could be even closer. We'll see what happens, but now up the inside on the back straight into the 130R, Kimi Räikkönen is going to take second position off of Felipe Massa. Massa has had a few podiums in recent races, but in this final stint anyway, Kimi Räikkönen looks as if he has the faster car. And anyway, completing the order, Hulkenberg was 6th. 2 Pedersen, 7th and 8th, Perez and Grosjean. Then we got Da Costa in 9th, and rounding out what's left of the race is Cooper Lee in 10th position. So there is Robert Kubica, looking for his first win since the 2013 season. That was at Singapore when he was driving for Andrew Racing. 2014, he remained with Andrew Racing, but now he's with Gajera for 2015. Will remain with the team for the next season alongside Jean-Eric Verne. And this has been a solid drive from 18th on the grid, by far one of the best performances in terms of making your way through the field. I'd probably still say that Stoffel Vandoorne's deserves a mention from Estoril before his engine failed with 5 laps to go, but this has been just as impressive from Robert. Gajera's always had a strong race engine, and they've always put that to good use. And now Kubica's putting that to great use as he's going to start the final lap of the race. And that will definitely move Gajera ahead of Shake and Bake in the Constructors' Championship. But the question is, will that move Gajera ahead of GRM? Well, GRM sits on 77 points. Bottas currently in 5th position, that's 4 points, moves on to 81. But Gajera's 12 points, if it stays like this, will move Robert Kubica, will move the team up to 84 points. That will jump Gajera up to 3rd in the championship. And Shake and Bake currently sit 5 points with Sebastian Vettel. That move to 77. That will drop them down to 5th in the Constructors' Championship. And then the aforementioned battle for last. Exolite don't have any cars running, so they're routed down to last position. Then the key question is Pedersen versus FJR, because Mitchell will jump up to 8th. Pedersen, I think, should move up to 9th, with Perez and Grosjean 7th and 8th. And down the back straight, Robert Kubica hasn't had a podium yet this season, believe it or not, despite what's been a very, very consistent season for the Polish driver. Lots of points finishes, but not yet a podium until now, because into the final chicane goes Robert Kubica. Out of the final chicane goes Robert Kubica. And to take his first win since Singapore 2013, Robert Kubica wins for Gajera and helps to propel them up to third in the championship. I've just seen on the timing screen Kimi Räikkönen has dropped down to fourth position. There he is! Kimi Räikkönen out of the race with what looks like a mechanical problem. It's a suspension failure. So that moves Massa up to second. Sebastian Vettel up to third. So he does get a podium in the final race of the season for Shake and Bake. So a good end to what has been a torrid second half of the season. I don't think that will make too much difference to the Constructors' Championship though, even though that does move Valtteri Bottas up to fourth position, sorry about that, because one extra point for GRM, not enough to maintain third in the championship over Gajera. But that does definitely guarantee Pedersen ninth in the Constructors' Championship with Perez and Grosjean, moving both points scores ahead of FJR. Raikkonen is classified 8th, so poor Antonio Felix da Costa only had 1 point all season, which is one more than Jenson Button. And a long list of retirements, a lot of them at the first corner, and they included Kevin Magnussen and Charlotte Plectrum. And it also includes Stoffel Vandoorne and Thomas Gonzalez as well. But a few reliability issues as well, noticeably for Jenson Button. Poor Jenson Button. You can't really say anything other than that. Looked as if he was going to have the fitting send-off, but the engine blew up. So there is the final championship standings, and Raikkonen's last lap retirement actually puts Sebastian Vettel in second in the championship, so he does get the runner-up spot in the end. Kimi Räikkönen third on 67 points. Now, Sebastian Vettel for Shake and Bake on 69 points. I think Courtney will be pleased with that, somehow. And Valtteri Bottas and Thomas Gonzalez tie with each other on 65 points, but Bottas has the 2 race wins. And there's the Constructors' Championship. Tornado, 186 points in the end. Meister, a very impressive first season in the mainstream, 124. And Gajera do indeed take third, ahead of GRM and Shake and Bake. Willow's quite lonely in 6th in the end, and Andrew just about holding on to 7th. Mitchell nearly jumped him in the end. And Pedersen move up to 9th ahead of FJR, and Exolite last. So, next up in the FF1M world will be the 1991 season, with lots of old names, old school classic names to look forward to. A 10 race season, and we shall see you for then.